my introduction. I was asked to do this presentation by Kevin, and he suggested that I do something a little bit different to my normal presentations, which are technical. Okay? This is a presentation about how the rebuild actually came about to do with documentation, and it was the fight to get the information and where it came from, etc., etc. First things first, there's three thank yous that I've got to give. One is to Tony Sale. I'm sure Tony's presence, his spirit is still around, I'm sure it still is. Without Tony, Colossus would never have been built, the rebuild would never have happened. Got to thank Margaret Sale, because Margaret has allowed me access to a lot of Tony's archive material, because obviously Tony was instrumental in getting the Colossus going, if you want. And thirdly, to Brian Randall, who's sitting up there. Brian assisted me with some information, particularly around Brian's involvement with getting some documents released, etc., etc. So there are my three thank yous. I'm a bit concerned about Brian sitting there, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Brian, and he's going to correct me, so it's going to be okay. So let's go. Now I'm going to start my little talk at the end of the war. The end of the war in Europe, 1945. In the park, there were 10 of these Colossi machines, 10 operational machines. Number 11 was being put together, but it was never commissioned. So there was only 10 operational machines in the park. As they came on the stream, they were enhanced, so the time you get to the last two, which is 9 and 10, they're the two most advanced machines. Now, when you get to the end of the war, you've got 10 of these beasts in Bletchley Park. The Lorentz machine, which is what the Colossus is working on, these Lorentz machines are not allowed to be used by the Germans. The Allies won't allow them to encrypt their information. So you've got 10 machines, and the flow of Lorentz traffic, or as it's known at Bletchley Park, tunny traffic, comes to an end. So you've got 10 machines. Now these machines are kept running, and the reason they're kept running for a short period of time is to do with the messages that they were unable to crack during the war. But you can't spend a whole day cracking one message, you don't know the value of it. So there were messages that were not cracked. And those were then attempted to break them using the Colossi. Why would you bother to do that? Well, it's quite simple, because the value in those messages, there's still intelligence in there about what the Germans were working on, etc., etc. And of course, you've got to bear in mind there's information in those messages to do with war crimes. So they were run for a very short period of time after the war. However, as I say, the messages dry up. Sorry about it. This is the first time I've done this presentation, and I'm using some quick cards. I wouldn't normally do it, but because this is not my normal presentation, I've got some quick cards here. I apologise if I sort of jump around a bit. But these are people involved with the design of the Colossi at Bletchley Park. The Mark I prototype, designed by Tommy Flowers. Under Lynch, he was involved with the development of the high-speed paper tape reader, which was the fastest paper tape reader that's ever been built. When you come on to the Mark II, it's basically Doc Coons, Hammer Coons. He was the chap who did most of the design work, taking the prototype design, enhancing it to what we know as the Colossus Mark IIs. These are the production machines that actually run 5 times faster than the original Colossus. Now, as I said, you've got 10 operational machines. The traffic dries up. take all these machines which are now surplus to requirements, and 8 of the 10 are dismantled. The 2 most advanced machines, they are retained, but the 8 are dismantled. Now, most of the stuff goes back into GPO stores. Most of the parts go back into GPO stores. However, the bedsteads and the counter-racks, they are not dismantled. They are stored in the east wing of H block here. So all the paper tape readers and the counters are stored here. The rest of the machines are dismantled. Parts go back to the GPO. There has been talk about 2 machines going to Manchester. That is not the case. There is discussion about machines going to Manchester, but at the end of the day it's decided that no, they cannot allow that to happen. What is agreed that 2 bedsteads, which is the paper tape readers, and 2 counter racks are allowed to go to Manchester. Now what you have up there on the right hand side is the shipping note that goes to Manchester. On there are three cases, wooden cases. There is a typo on there. There are actually 2 which are 2'6", 4 foot by 7 foot, and there's 2 of those, even though the other one says that it's 4 inches, that's not the case. Those 2 contain the paper tape reader, the bedsteads. The third one, that contains the 2 counter racks. Other than ancillary equipment like teleprinters and paper tape punches and stuff like that, that is all that goes to Manchester. You have 2 machines which are left. These are 9 and 10. These are the 2 most advanced machines. And they make their way to Eastcote, which is in North London, along with, I'm not sure how many engineers, original engineers, but maybe 2 or 3. I certainly know that John Kane, he was one of the guys that went to Eastcote with the Colossus. In actual fact, John Kane was the guy who built Colossus number 2. He was one of the team. I'll have to say, John, who I met on 2 occasions, passed away about 5, 6 weeks. And I had the great fortune of meeting him on 2 occasions. And John was, very cagey at what he said. I asked him about what he did with the machines after the war, and he said he spent most of his time modifying them, and he wouldn't tell me what he did on the machines. I suggested something to him, and his response was, "I'm sorry, I can't comment." But he had a big smile on his face. So I knew what he had done to those machines, and that's basically modified them to work on other ciphers. But he wouldn't tell me what ciphers or what modifications. But that's what he spent most of his time doing at Eastcote, other than keeping them working. In 1950, those 2 heavily modified Colossi go to Oakley Farm, GCHQ, down in Cheltenham. And they were kept running, in my opinion, they were kept running to 1955, 56. And I came to that date because that superseded Colossus. That is Colorado. The drawings for Colorado are dated 1955. So if you say that you keep the old machine running or available for another 5 years, that takes you up to about 1960. And that ties up very nicely with a conversation I had with a chap who claimed that he destroyed the last Colossus in 1960/61. And I'll explain more about that conversation later on. Brian? I didn't realise Brian was going to be here today, so I apologise for this, Brian. and I'm sure Brian's going to correct me now. But everything at that point is still classified. There's nothing in the public domain at all. Now, Brian was working on a paper on early British computing in the 70s, early 70s. And through a conversation he had with someone, it was mentioned about a paper that was written by Donald Mickey, is that correct? Was that paper written by Donald Mickey?
There were letters that I got from Donald Mickey, but there was, I'm not quite sure where you're going with that. The first published mention of Colossus that I can think of was in a single paragraph of a strange paper by R.J. Good, Jack Good.
R.J. Good, yeah. Right on, Brian, I got it wrong. R.J. Good, that's basically what I was talking about. And most important bit in that piece of paper, do you want to tell everybody what that sentence was, Brian?
Sorry.
But the Boolean function
Yeah.
that you read?
Now that I think is wording from Donald Mickey.
Ah, right, okay.
As I say, the first published mention of the word Colossus and a paragraph describing what he did was in this paper by Donald Mickey. By the time I put various things together and produced a draft paper, I then got everybody who I quoted to allow me to publish that paper. I'm sure they didn't have the right to do that. But at some stage, possibly then, Donald Mickey, who was the main source after the first thing from Jack Good, well, I managed to get him to put his name on the summary version of that paper, which appeared in my book, The Origins of Digital Computers.
Right.
Which was very fair. One, it kept me out of the limelight on that paper, and two, it reflected the fact that it was Donald more than anybody else who provided information.
Right, thank you, Brian.
Sorry.
And the horse's mouth. Right. Brian's going to correct me again now, probably. Because Brian now knows about this machine that's in Bletchley Park during the war that performs these Boolean functions, Brian tries to get the information for this machine released. And he sends letters to Ted Heath, Cabinet Office, and eventually Brian gets a reply. And the reply, oh, hang on. Yeah. Right. Yeah, right. So Brian sends documents, sends letters to Ted Heath, etc., asking for the information to be released. And he gets a response, a reply that comes back, which basically says that we could not possibly release information about that machine at this time. That confirms to Brian that there was a machine up until then. That's correct, Brian.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was the proud possessor of the one unclassified document which indicated that Britain had a computer during World War II.
An electronic computer, yeah. So Brian then bombards Ted Heath again, and eventually he gets summons to the Cabinet Office, where he's met by the suits, shall we say, and he is shown 6 photographs, yeah, and he's given contact details of some of the original Colossus engineers.
I didn't actually bombard Ted Heath.
There
was a change of government.
All right.
That was important,
Right.
because the Conservatives and Labour tended to have a different view on issues of Official Secrets Act.
Right.
And via David Kahn, I contacted somebody whose name escapes me for the moment, but who was the person in the Cabinet Office who was in charge of Bletchley Park and other things. So one level above, GCHQ. And that was the person I saw, plus the chief scientist of GCHQ. Sorry, I'm forgetting names.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. So then after some 32 years, Brian has now got in his hands 6 photographs. Those photographs are released into the public domain. Yeah? So these are the said photographs. Probably you've seen most of these before. On the top left-hand side is the programming panel for Colossus, particularly for the Mark I. It didn't have a switch panel, it had jack field. In the middle at the top, that's the rear view of the Colossus, and on the top right is one of the photographs depicting one of the later versions of Colossus. And then along the bottom right, you have the side view, one of the side views of Colossus, and those big square things are some of the power supplies needed to run the machine. The middle photograph is the famous photograph of the 2 rains operating the machine. And then finally in the bottom left is the valves, picture of the valves and the valve socket that was used on Colossus. Now the valve on the right hand side, that last small valve, that is actually one of the focus valves, and they're specials. There's only over 15,000 of those made, and they were made for proximity detectors in a rocket project that failed. It failed because they were trying to look at the shadows and they home in on it, and it didn't work. So there's some 15,000 of these made. Somehow, I don't know how, somehow Gollis Hill got their hands on them and they were used in the Colossus because of the speed. Standard photocells were not fast enough. Don't know how they got their hands on them, but they did. And that's Brian's paper that he presented at Los Alamos in 1976. And imagine this, that there's Brian, and he's telling this audience of Americans that their ENIAC was not the first, but it was British. That went down well, sure.
To be fair, the reactions that I got, and Doc Coombs was with me, were of both interest and horror. No. There wasn't any jealousy, at least in our hearing at all.
But it sounds better. But it sounds better, though, doesn't it? So right, so 1976 we got Brian's paper. We got 6 photographs, and that's it. There's no mention of how this machine actually worked. We've got the architecture, well, some of the architecture, but there's no understanding of how this damn thing works. And in 1977, you get The Secret War, which is a BBC production, and you get that. And then you get William Woolard talking about Colossus. And if you have a look at it, you will see on his right-hand side, he's talking about, doesn't talk about the moraines, he talks about fish. Fish is a generic term that is used at Bletchley Park for teleprinter code, not specific to tunny or moraines, it's a generic term. But on the right-hand side, he's got a machine, a big encryption machine. And he's talking about Colossus, etc. And that machine, if you have a look at it, and you count the number of wheels on it, there's 10. For the range, there's 12. So what is that machine? Well, that is a Siemens T52. Yes, it is a German encryption machine that was used during the war. It's nothing to do with Colossus at all. And yet, William Woolard is actually saying, well, this is all to do with Colossus. So, misinformation. And then during the 80s, there are a few papers released by Tommy Flowers and some of the engineers who worked on the Mark IIs. So there's a few papers there again. Not one of them will talk about the moraines or what the actual machine was doing. So then you come to Tony Sell. Tony between 57 and 63, was working at GCHQ. And he was working with Peter Wright, which you've probably heard of. And if you read Spycatcher, you will actually see there's references to Tony. Tony is actually Peter Wright's right-hand man. He was working with Peter Wright. 89 to 93, Tony's working at the Science Museum, and he's working on restoring early Val computers. I believe that was Pegasus. And he thought, well, I better find out a bit more about the history of early British computing. So he goes digging in the archives, and what does he find? He finds Wright's paper, and he finds these other papers written by Tommy Bowser, etc. Oh, this is interesting. I wonder if it's going to be possible to actually build this. But it's no information. So he has a meeting with Don Hallwood and Harry Benson. Don Hallwood was one of the cryptographers during the war in Bletchley Park. Harry Benson was one of the chaps who did work on Colossus number 2, one of the designers. And on the meeting, when he left there, he was given a contact at GCHQ. At this point, Tony decides that if he's going to build a Colossus Mark II, or sorry, a Colossus, he's going to need this information which is not in the public domain. So, he instigates the reactivation of his security clearance, hoping that that will get him access to some of these documents that are not in the public domain. 92, Tony's involved with saving Bletchley Park from being bulldozed. And he's actually one of the trustees. Bletchley Park Trust is given a short-term lease on several of the buildings or parts within Bletchley Park. So now Tony has got somewhere, if he wants to build a Colossus. The trust agree that he can, so he's now got a place to build this big machine. 93, 12th of May, he presents his project proposal to a selected group of people at GCHQ. That is met favourably, and he's given a suggested strategy for possibly rebuilding this machine. And in due course, Tony gets the agreement from GCHQ that he can go ahead with this project. However, he is under a lot of constraints. One of them is he can only build a Mark I and not a Mark II. Okay, because that's the prototype, that's a smaller machine. 2, the public are not allowed in the same room as the machine. So a viewing gallery will have to be built, the door has to remain locked. And thirdly, Tony cannot talk about what the machine did during the war. You can talk about the machine, you can't talk about how it worked and what it did. On the back of Brian's inquiries, GCHQ have realised they don't have a technical document about Colossus. So they asked Don Hallwood to produce one. Because Don is working at GCHQ, he was here during the war, he was working on Tunny, etc. He was asked to produce a technical paper. But that paper was classified. Tony gets his clearance, GCHQ, down he goes, he gets access to that paper. Now that report remained classified until 2003. So we're talking, this is 94. This is the classified document. And in there are 3 circuit diagrams. You can see them on the Colossus wall. There's 3 circuit diagrams. That's one of the originals. That's one of the Pyrotron rings. But that's the type of stuff that Tony had. You can count the number of valves that's on there. You've got the photographs. You can now try to locate that design circuit on the machine. So once you know where it is on the machine, you know what the layout looks like, so you can go and build some of these modules. But the first one that Tony starts to build is an electronic counter. And in June 94, Tony and Harry Fenson visit Doc Coombs. Very successful meeting. Doc Coombs is very impressed with what Tony has achieved so far. And when Tony leaves, Doc Coombs gives Tony 10 fragments of circuit diagrams. 23 circuit diagrams that have been kept. Tony's now got more circuit diagrams, but only parts for the machine. So in July 94, there's Tony with his big Meccano set. Right.
You're going to have to do the rest in a bit, I'm afraid.
Wow. Ain't got much to go. That's Tony in his little cage. That's the first, that's the bedstead. A bit later on, that's the rebuild, that's the Mark 1. That's the first prototype, that's the photo cells. Behind it is the counter. If you have a look on the back wall, that's the viewing gallery, but the public are not allowed in. 96, Duke of Kent turns it on. Tony's on the right, that's the, Tony Flowers is on the left. This is what I'm going to finish in a minute. This is one of the most important things that happened. In 96, the Americans released some documents. Margaret and Tony disappeared to America. And on the 11th of November, not December, 11th of November, Tony and Margaret go to NORAD, which is where all the government records are kept. And Margaret spends the day photocopying. Tony spends his time scanning. They come back to the UK, and at that point, Tony has sufficient information to move the project forward. So I'm conscious of time. Shall I finish there?
I'll be very kind.
Yeah?
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah? And then the next thing is, governments releases documents in August 2000. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Phil. Actually, that